The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between the stars. It was bigger than any city on Earth and shined with bright lights that could be seen from far away. Inside its giant halls, creatures from 12 different worlds had come together for an important meeting. The meeting room was huge. The ceiling was so high that clouds could form near the top. Strange beings sat around a circular table that was the size of a football field. Some had blue skin and 4 arms. Others looked like giant insects with silver wings. A few were made of what looked like living crystal that glowed with inner light dot. At the head of the table sat Admiral Zexter. He was from the Krillian Federation and looked like a tall, thin human, except his skin was purple and his eyes were completely black. His voice was deep and serious as he spoke to the group. "Friends, we face a terrible threat," Admiral Zexter said. "The Vorthan Empire has attacked 3 star systems in the past month. They have killed millions of innocent people. Their ships are strong, and their weapons are deadly. We must act fast before they attack more worlds." The other beings around the table made worried sounds. Some clicked their teeth together. Others made low, humming noises. A creature that looked like a giant beetle tapped its claws on the table. "The Vorthans are not like us," continued the Admiral. "They do not want peace. They only want to conquer and destroy. Our normal ways of fighting will not work against them. We need our best warriors for a special mission." Commander Veltara of the Celestial Navy stood up. She was tall and graceful, with silver skin that seemed to shine with its own light. Her voice was like music when she spoke. "I agree with Admiral Zexter," she said. "We need to send a small team to their main base. They must get inside without being seen and steal their secret plans. Only our finest soldiers can do this job." The War Chief Gorth of the Hegemony slammed his massive fist on the table. He was twice as tall as a human, and his body was covered in thick, rocky skin. His voice sounded like thunder. "My warriors are ready for battle," he growled. "Our weapons can turn mountains into dust. Our armor can stop any attack. The Vorthans will learn to fear us." Other beings around the table nodded and made sounds of agreement. They began to talk about their powerful weapons and advanced technology. Some spoke of laser guns that could cut through solid steel. Others mentioned shields that could stop any bullet or bomb. Then a quiet voice spoke from the far end of the table. "What about Earth's military forces? Our special operations teams have experience in difficult missions like this." The voice belonged to Ambassador Lisa Carter, the only human in the room. She was small compared to the alien beings around her, but she sat straight and looked confident. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple style, and she wore a dark blue uniform with Earth's flag on the shoulder. The moment she finished speaking, the room went completely quiet. Then, one by one, the alien beings began to laugh. It started as small chuckles, but grew into loud, mocking laughter that echoed through the huge chamber. Commander Veltara's musical laugh was the loudest of all. "Oh, dear human," she said, wiping tears from her glowing eyes. "That is very funny. Your people have only been in space for a few decades. You still use those ancient rocket ships that barely work." War Chief Gorth's laughter sounded like rocks falling down a mountain. "Humans still fight with bullets and bombs," he said. "My youngest child has toys more advanced than your best weapons." A creature that looked like a floating jellyfish with dozens of tentacles spoke in a voice like wind chimes. "The human military uses vehicles that run on burning fuel. How primitive. Our soldiers travel by thought alone." Admiral Zexter held up his hand for silence. "Please, friends, let us not be too harsh. The humans are still learning. But Ambassador Carter, you must understand this mission requires the most advanced technology and training. Your species is simply not ready for this level of warfare." Lisa Carter's face turned red, but she kept her voice steady. "I understand your concerns, Admiral. But human soldiers have something that might be valuable. We have fought wars on our planet for thousands of years. We know how to adapt and survive in any situation." This brought another round of laughter from the alien beings. A creature with 6 legs and a head like a praying mantis clicked its mandibles together. Fighting on one small planet is not the same as fighting across the galaxy, little human. "Commander." Veltara leaned forward with a cruel smile. "Your soldiers carry backpacks full of food and water. Ours can survive for months without eating. Your weapons need bullets. Ours draw power from the stars themselves. Your training takes years," added War Chief Gorth. "Our warriors are born ready for battle. They have natural armor and weapons that grow from their bodies." The Admiral raised his hand again. "I think we have made our point clear. The human military, while brave, is not equipped for this mission. We will select our team from the more advanced civilizations." But Lisa Carter was not ready to give up. She stood up and looked around the table at all the alien faces. "I understand that you think we are primitive, but I would like to make a formal request. Allow one human soldier to join this mission as an observer. Let them see how advanced warfare is conducted." The laughter started again, but this time it was different. The aliens were not just amused, they were excited by the idea. It would be entertaining to watch a primitive human try to keep up with their advanced soldiers. Admiral Zexter smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "This is an interesting proposal, Ambassador Carter. It would be educational for your people to see what real military operations look like." "But the human would have to take the most dangerous assignment," said Commander Veltara. "We cannot risk our valuable soldiers protecting someone who cannot protect themselves." "Of course," agreed War Chief Gorth. "The human can have the suicide mission. When they fail, it will teach your people about the realities of galactic warfare." Lisa Carter felt her heart sink, but she kept her face calm. "I accept your terms on behalf of Earth." "Excellent," said Admiral Zexter. "This will be most entertaining. We will contact your military leaders and tell them to send their best soldier, though I suspect even your best will not survive the first hour of the mission." The meeting continued for several more hours, but Lisa Carter barely heard the rest of the discussion. She was thinking about the human soldier who would soon face the most dangerous mission in galactic history. She could only hope that Earth's military training would be enough to keep them alive long enough to prove that humans were more than just primitive creatures playing with fire dot as the meeting ended and the alien beings began to leave. Lisa Carter sat alone at the massive table. She looked out through the station's giant windows at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, the Vorthan Empire was preparing for war, and soon one human soldier would have to face them with nothing but Earth's simple weapons and basic training. She could only pray it would be enough. The morning sun was bright over the Naval Special Warfare Command Base in Coronado, California. The sound of waves crashing on the beach mixed with the sounds of soldiers training. Men and women in camouflage uniforms ran along the sand, their boots making deep prints in the wet ground. Lieutenant Commander Jake Sullivan was finishing his morning run when his radio crackled to life. "Sullivan, report to the briefing room immediately," came the voice of his commanding officer. Jake wiped sweat from his face and checked his watch. It was only 7 in the morning, which was unusual for an emergency briefing. He had been a Navy SEAL for 12 years, and unexpected calls like this usually meant something big was happening. He jogged to the main building and climbed the stairs to the briefing room. Inside, he found Captain Mary Rodriguez waiting for him. She was a tough woman with short gray hair and serious eyes. Jake had served under her command for 3 years and had never seen her look so frustrated. "Sit down, Jake," she said, pointing to a chair in front of a large screen. What I'm about to tell you is going to sound like science fiction, but I need you to take it seriously. Jake sat down and looked at the screen. It showed a picture of space with stars and planets that he had never seen before. Ma'am, is this about the rumors we've been hearing? About contact with alien civilizations? Captain Rodriguez nodded. It's all true, Jake. We've been in contact with other intelligent species for the past 6 months. There's a whole galaxy full of different civilizations out there, and they have technology that makes our best equipment look like stone tools. The screen changed to show strange creatures in what looked like a massive meeting room. Jake saw beings with blue skin, others that looked like insects, and some that seemed to be made of light itself. This is the Galactic Defense Council, Captain Rodriguez continued. They're facing a threat from something called the Vorthan Empire. These Vorthans are conquerors who destroy entire planets. A council needs to send a team on a dangerous mission to stop them. Jake studied the images carefully. What does this have to do with us, Mom? Captain Rodriguez's expression became even more serious. Our ambassador suggested that Earth's special forces could help with the mission. The aliens laughed at her. Jake, they think our military is primitive and worthless. The screen showed more images of alien weapons and technology. Jake saw guns that fired beams of light, armor that seemed to be made of energy, and vehicles that floated without any visible means of support. They agreed to let one human join the mission, Captain Rodriguez said, but only as an observer. They want to prove how useless our military is compared to theirs. They've given us the most dangerous part of the mission, expecting whoever we send to die quickly. Jake leaned back in his chair. And you want me to be that observer? You're the best we have, Jake. 12 years of special operations experience. You've been in combat in more hostile environments than anyone else in the USI. Teams. If anyone can survive this mission, it's you. The screen changed again, showing detailed plans of an alien base. It looked like a fortress made of black metal and glowing crystals. Jake studied the layout, noting the defensive positions and potential. Entry points. What's the mission objective? He asked. Infiltrate a Vorthan research facility and steal intelligence about their new weapons. The alien team will use their advanced technology to handle the main assault while you watch from a safe distance. Jake raised an eyebrow. Safe distance? That's what they think, Captain Rodriguez said with a slight smile. They don't understand that Navy SEALs don't observe from safe distances. We complete the mission whatever it takes. For the next hour, Captain Rodriguez showed Jake everything they knew about the alien technology and the Vorthan enemy. The aliens had weapons that could destroy buildings with a single shot. They had armor that could stop any human weapon. Their bases were protected by energy shields that were supposed to be impossible to break through. The aliens think their advanced technology makes them better warriors, Captain Rodriguez explained. They don't understand that technology is just a tool. The warrior using it is what matters. Jake nodded. He had learned this lesson many times in his career. The most expensive rifle in the world was useless in the hands of someone who didn't know how to use it properly. What equipment can I take? Jake asked. They're providing you with some of their technology to use during the mission. But you can also bring your own gear if you want. Jake thought about this carefully. The alien weapons were clearly more powerful than anything Earth had, but they were also unfamiliar. In a dangerous situation, he preferred to use equipment he knew and trusted. I'll take some of their gear for backup, he decided. But I'm also bringing my own weapons and equipment. Captain Rodriguez looked surprised. Jake, their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Why would you want to bring inferior equipment? Because it's not inferior, ma'am. It's different. These aliens have been at peace for so long that they've forgotten what real warfare looks like. They rely on their technology to win battles for them. But technology can fail. Jake stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see SEAL trainees crawling through mud under barbed wire while instructors shouted at them. "Look at those trainees," he said. "They're not learning to use the most advanced weapons. They're learning to survive in the worst possible conditions with whatever they can find. That's what makes a real warrior." Captain Rodriguez joined him at the window. "The aliens won't understand that approach." "Good," Jake said. "That means they won't expect it either." Over the next week, Jake prepared for the mission. He spent hours learning to use the alien weapons and equipment. The guns were strange too. Hold and fired beams of energy instead of bullets. The armor was light but stronger than anything Earth had ever made. The communication devices could send messages across vast distances instantly. But Jake also carefully selected his own equipment. He chose his favorite M4 carbine, the rifle he had used in dozens of combat missions. He packed blocks of C4 explosive night vision goggles and a combat knife that had been with him for 8 years. He also brought simple items like rope, duct, tape, and a basic first aid kit. His fellow SEALs thought he was crazy. "Jake, why are you bringing that old gear?" asked his teammate Kevin Murphy. "The aliens have weapons that can blow up a tank with one shot, because sometimes the old ways work best," Jake replied. "These aliens have never fought against someone who doesn't play by their rules." The night before he left, Jake visited his old mentor, Master Chief Danny Brooks. Danny was retired now, but he had trained Jake when he first joined the SEALs. The old man lived in a small house near the beach, and Jake often came to him for advice. "So you're going to fight aliens," Danny said as they sat on his porch, watching the sunset over the ocean. "Never thought I'd live to see the day." "It's not really a fight," Jake said. "They want me to observe, can learn how much better they are than us." Danny laughed. "Son, I've been in this business for 40 years. I've seen every kind of enemy you can imagine. The ones who think they're better than you are always the easiest to beat. Why is that? Because they underestimate you. They think their fancy equipment makes them invincible. But war isn't about having the best toys. It's about adapting to any situation and never giving up. That's what makes us special." Jake nodded. He had learned this lesson many times, but it was good to hear it again. "Remember," Danny continued, "it doesn't matter how advanced their technology is. At the end of the day, war is about one warrior defeating another, and no alien in the galaxy has been through the training you have." The next morning, Jake stood on the launch pad next to a strange aircraft that looked like it was made of liquid metal. It was an alien shuttle that would take him to meet his new teammates. He wore his standard combat uniform with his Earth equipment attached, while also carrying a bag of alien technology. Captain Rodriguez came to see him off. "Good luck, Jake. Show them what human soldiers can do." Jake climbed into the shuttle and strapped himself into a seat that seemed to mold itself to his body. As the craft lifted off silently and shot into space, he looked down at Earth, growing smaller below him. He thought about all the training he had been through. The freezing nights in the mountains of Afghanistan, the scorching days in the deserts of Iraq, the dangerous missions where everything went wrong and he had to improvise to survive. The aliens thought human soldiers were primitive. They were about to learn that sometimes primitive was exactly what you needed to win. The alien ship called Starfire was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. It was 3 times bigger than the largest aircraft carrier on Earth, but it moved through space without making any sound. The hull was made of some kind of metal that seemed to shift colors as light hit it from different angles. Jake walked through the corridors of the ship, trying not to look too amazed by everything he saw. The walls glowed with soft light that came from the metal itself. Doors opened by themselves when he approached them. The air smelled clean and fresh, like a forest after rain. He found his teammates waiting for him in what the aliens called the planning room. The room was large and circular, with a table in the center that showed a three-dimensional image of their target floating in the air above it. The first alien Jake met was Zendai from the Psi Collective. He looked almost human, except his skin was pale blue, and his eyes were completely white with no pupils. He wore a simple gray robe and carried no visible weapons. "So you are the human," Zendai said without moving his mouth. His voice came directly into Jake's mind, which was a very strange feeling. "I can sense your thoughts. They are very primitive." The second team member was Thrak from the Iron Clans. He was huge, almost 7 feet tall, and his entire body was covered in thick metal armor that looked like it had grown rather than been made. His face was hidden behind a helmet with glowing red eyes. "Human warrior," Thrak said in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. "I have heard your species fights with crude weapons. This should be amusing to watch." The third member was Zara, from the Morphic Union. She looked like a normal human woman with short black hair and green eyes, but Jake could tell something was different about her. Her movements were too smooth, and her skin had a slight shimmer to it. "Hello, Jake," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I can take any shape I want. Right now, I look human to make you feel more comfortable. But I could become a bird or a fish, or even a rock if the mission requires it." Jake nodded politely to each of them. "It's good to meet you all. I'm looking forward to working together." Zendai made a sound that might have been laughter. "Working together? Human, you are here to observe our superior methods. You will stay in the back where it is safe while we complete the mission." The floating image above the table showed their target in detail. It was a massive fortress built into the side of a mountain on a moon called Kepler 442b. The fortress was made of black metal and surrounded by energy shields that glowed purple in the darkness. "This is the Vorthan Research Facility," Thrak explained. "Inside, they are building new weapons that could destroy entire solar systems. We must get in, steal their data, and get out before they discover us." Zara pointed to different parts of the fortress. "The facility has 3 main defensive layers. First, an energy shield that destroys anything that tries to pass through it. Second, automated defense turrets that can track and kill targets from miles away. Third, elite Vorthan guards who are trained from birth to fight and kill." Jake studied the fortress carefully. It looked impressive, but he had seen similar defensive setups during his years as a SEAL. The weapons were more advanced, but the basic principles were the same. "What's the plan?" he asked. Zendai's white eyes seemed to stare right through him. "I will use my mental powers to disable the shield generator. Thrak will destroy the defense turrets with his heavy weapons. Zara will shapeshift into a Vorthan guard and lead us inside. You will follow at a safe distance and try not to get killed." Jake nodded, but privately he was already thinking about problems with their plan. It was too direct, too dependent on their advanced abilities working perfectly. In his experience, simple plans were better than complex ones. "What if something goes wrong?" he asked. Thrak's laugh sounded like a machine breaking down. "Nothing will go wrong, human. We have planned for every possibility. Our technology is too advanced for the Vorthans to stop. But what if the shield generator is protected against mental attacks? What if the turrets have backup systems? What if the guards have ways to detect shapeshifters?" The 3 aliens looked at each other and then back at Jake. Zara spoke for all of them. "You worry too much, human. That is because your species is used to fighting with primitive tools that fail often. Our technology does not fail." Jake wanted to argue, but he decided to stay quiet. He had learned over the years that sometimes it was better to let people make their own mistakes. The ship flew through space for several hours, traveling faster than the speed of light through some kind of technology that Jake didn't understand. He spent the time checking his equipment and thinking about the mission. The alien weapons they had given him were impressive. The energy rifle could fire beams that would cut through steel like paper. The armor was light, but could stop bullets and energy blasts. The communication device let him talk to his teammates over vast distances. But Jake also had his own equipment with him. His M4 carbine with plenty of ammunition, blocks of C4 explosive, night vision goggles, a combat knife, rope, duct tape, and other simple tools that had saved his life many times. As they got closer to the target, Jake noticed something that worried him. The ship's sensors were picking up more Vorthan patrol ships than expected. The enemy was more alert than the intelligence reports had suggested. "I think we might have a problem," Jake said, pointing to the sensor display. Zendai barely glanced. At the screen, "Those are just routine patrols. Our ship is invisible to their sensors." "But there are twice as many ships as there should be," Jake insisted. "That suggests they know something is coming." Thrak's armored shoulders moved in what might have been a shrug. "Even if they detect us human, they cannot stop us. Watch and learn how real warriors fight." Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The lights changed from soft white to flashing red. The captain's voice came over the communication system, speaking in a language Jake didn't understand. "What's happening?" Jake asked. Zara's face had gone pale. "The Vorthan ships have detected us. They're attacking." The ship shook violently as enemy weapons hit its shields. Jake was thrown against the wall, but his training kicked in, and he rolled with the impact. The three aliens, however, were not prepared for the sudden violence. Zendai fell to the floor, his concentration broken. Thrak's heavy armor made him slow to react. Zara struggled to maintain her human form as the ship bucked and rolled. "How is this possible?" Zendai demanded, his mental voice filled with panic. "Our shields should be impenetrable." Jake looked at the tactical display and saw the problem immediately. They're using a new type of sensor array. It can detect energy signatures that your stealth technology doesn't hide. Another massive hit shook the ship. This time, Jake heard the sound of metal tearing. The hull had been breached. "We need to abandon ship," Jake said, already moving toward the escape pods. "Impossible," Thrak said. "Our ship is the most advanced vessel in the galaxy. It cannot be destroyed by primitive Vorthan weapons." As if to prove him wrong, another explosion rocked the ship. This time, the lights went out completely, and they were left in darkness except for the emergency lighting. "The ship is dying," Jake said firmly. "We need to get to the escape pods now, or we're all going to die with it." The aliens finally realized that their superior technology was not going to save them. They followed Jake through the dark corridors as he led them to the escape pod bay. Behind them, they could hear the sounds of the ship breaking apart. They reached the escape pods just as another explosion tore through the hull. The four of them climbed into separate pods and launched into space just as the Starfire broke into pieces. Jake's pod tumbled through the darkness, its simple systems trying to find a safe place to land. Through the small window, he could see the other pods scattered across the sky like falling stars. The plan was already falling apart, and they hadn't even reached the surface yet. His pod hit the atmosphere of the moon and began to glow with heat. The alien technology worked perfectly, protecting him from the burning air outside. But when he looked at his instruments, he saw that he was going to land far from the target and far from his teammates. The pod crashed into a thick forest with a sound like thunder. Jake was thrown around inside, but his training had taught him how to survive rough landings. When the pod finally stopped moving, he took a moment to check himself for injuries. He was bruised and his left shoulder hurt, but nothing was broken. He gathered his equipment and opened the pod's hatch. The air outside was thin, but breathable. The forest around him was made of strange purple trees that glowed faintly in the darkness. Jake activated his communication device and tried to contact his teammates. All he got was static. Either they were too far away, or their equipment had been damaged in the crash. He was alone on an alien moon, miles from his target, with no way to contact his team. The mission had gone wrong in the first 10 minutes, just as he had feared it would. But Jake Sullivan had not survived 12 years as a Navy SEAL by giving up when things got difficult. He checked his compass, shouldered his pack, and began walking toward the fortress. The aliens had expected him to observe from a safe distance. Instead, he was going to show them how a real warrior completed a mission. Jake moved through the alien forest like a ghost. The purple trees were tall and thin, with leaves that glowed softly in the darkness. The ground was covered with a thick carpet of moss that made no sound under his boots. He had been walking for 3 hours, and the fortress was still 2 miles away. He stopped behind a large tree and pulled out his binoculars. In the distance, he could see flashes of light and hear the sounds of battle. His alien teammates had reached the fortress and were fighting the Vorthan defenders. Even from far away, Jake could tell the battle was not going well. Through his binoculars, he watched Zendai trying to use his mental powers against the fortress shields. The blue-skinned alien was standing in the open, his arms raised toward the energy barrier. But instead of shutting down, the shields were getting brighter and stronger. They have psychic dampeners, Jake said to himself. Of course they do. He could see Thrak firing his heavy weapons at the automated turrets. The big alien's armor was taking hits from multiple directions, and sparks were flying from the damaged metal. His powerful guns were destroying some of the turrets, but more kept appearing to replace them. Zara was trying to shapeshift into a Vorthan guard, but every time she changed form, security scanners would detect her and sound alarms. She kept having to change back and find new hiding places. Jake shook his head. The plan was failing exactly as he had predicted. The aliens were too used to their technology working perfectly. When it didn't, they had no backup plan. He put away his binoculars and continued moving toward the fortress. But instead of following the direct path his teammates had taken, Jake circled around to the back of the mountain. He had noticed something in the mission briefing that the others had missed. The fortress had been built into the side of a mountain, but mountains were never perfectly solid. There are always cracks, caves, and weak points. Jake was looking for a way in that the Vorthans would never expect anyone to use Dot. He found what he was looking for on the north side of the mountain. It was a ventilation shaft that came out of the rock about 50 feet up a steep cliff. The shaft was only 2 feet wide and protected by a metal grate. To the Vorthans, it was impossible to reach. To a Navy SEAL who had climbed cliffs in Afghanistan, it was just another Tuesday. Jake unpacked his climbing gear and began scaling the rock face. The stone was different from earth rock, but the principles were the same. Find a handhold, test it, trust it, move up. Find the next handhold, repeat. It took him 30 minutes to reach the ventilation shaft. The metal grate was held in place by 6 bolts. Jake used a small tool from his kit to remove them quietly. The grate came away in his hands, revealing a dark tunnel that led into the heart of the fortress. The tunnel was just wide enough for Jake to crawl through. He put on his night vision goggles and began moving forward. The air in the tunnel was warm and smelled like metal and ozone. He could hear the sounds of machinery and voices echoing from somewhere ahead. After crawling for 10 minutes, Jake reached a junction where the tunnel split into 3 directions. He listened carefully and chose the path that seemed to lead toward the center of the fortress. His years of training had taught him to trust his instincts in situations like this. The tunnel eventually opened into a maintenance room filled with pipes and electrical equipment. Jake dropped down silently and checked his surroundings. The room was empty, but he could hear footsteps in the corridor outside. He crept to the door and peered through a small window. 2 Vorthan guards were walking past, talking in their harsh language. They were tall and thin, with gray skin and large black eyes. They wore armor that looked like it was made of living metal, and they carried weapons that hummed with energy. Jake waited until they passed, then slipped out of the maintenance room. He was now inside the fortress, and no alarms had been triggered. The Vorthans had no idea he was there. He moved through the corridors like a shadow, staying close to the walls and avoiding the security cameras. When he encountered guards, he used the skills he had learned in a dozen different countries. A silenced pistol shot here, a knife thrust there, always from behind, always quick and quiet. The guards who died never had a chance to raise an alarm. Their bodies were hidden in storage rooms and maintenance closets. To anyone checking the security systems, it would look like the guards had simply left their posts. Jake's first target was the fortress's communication center. He found it on the 3rd level, protected by 2 guards and multiple security doors. The guards died quickly and silently. The security doors were more of a challenge, but Jake had brought something the Vorthans didn't expect. He placed his last C4 charge on the exterior wall of the data center and moved to the far corner of the room. The explosion blew a hole in the wall, big enough for a man to climb through. Jake rappelled down the outside of the fortress using rope from his pack. Behind him, more alarms were sounding as the Vorthans discovered the bodies of their guards and the damage to their systems. But Jake wasn't finished yet. As he reached the ground, he saw something that made his blood run cold. His 3 alien teammates were trapped in a courtyard, surrounded by dozens of Vorthan soldiers. Zendai was wounded and couldn't use his mental powers. Thrak's armor was badly damaged and sparking. Zara was barely conscious. The Vorthan commander, a tall alien with scars covering his gray face, was standing over them with a weapon pointed at Zendai's head. Jake could hear him speaking in broken English. "You thought your advanced technology would save you," the commander said. "But you forgot that technology means nothing without the warrior spirit to use it properly." Jake realized that the aliens were about to be executed. Everything he had been taught as a SEAL told him to escape with the intelligence and complete the mission. But another part of his training, the part about never leaving a teammate behind, made the decision for him. He checked his weapons and began moving toward the courtyard. The Vorthans had made one crucial mistake. They thought they had captured all the intruders. They had no idea that a human was still free and moving through their fortress like a deadly shadow. Jake positioned himself on a rooftop overlooking the courtyard. He could see 20 Vorthan guards, all armed with energy weapons and wearing heavy armor. The odds were impossible by any reasonable standard, but Jake Sullivan had never been reasonable. He was a Navy SEAL, and Navy SEALs didn't count odds. They just found a way to win. He started with his sniper rifle, picking off the guards who were standing watch on the walls. The silenced shots dropped 3 Vorthans before anyone realized they were under attack. Jake then switched to his M4 carbine and began moving. He jumped from the rooftop into the courtyard, landing behind a group of guards. His knife found the weak points in their armor before they could turn around. 3 more enemies down. The remaining Vorthans finally realized they were under attack, but they couldn't see where the shots were coming from. Jake was moving constantly, using shadows and cover to stay invisible. His muzzle flashes were brief, and his shots were precise. One by one, the Vorthan guards fell. Some were killed by bullets that found gaps in their armor. Others were taken down by grenades that Jake threw with perfect timing. A few were eliminated by traps he set using tripwires and C4. The Vorthan commander finally spotted Jake and fired his energy weapon. The being missed by inches and burned a hole in the wall behind him. Jake rolled to cover and came up firing. His bullets couldn't penetrate the commander's heavy armor, but they didn't need to. Jake had noticed that the commander's armor had cooling vents on the back to prevent overheating. He flanked around behind the alien and put 3 rounds through the vents. The armor systems began to fail, and the commander collapsed as his life support shut down in less than 5 minutes. Jake had eliminated 20 enemy soldiers and rescued his teammates. He ran to where they were lying and checked their injuries. How? Zendai whispered, his white eyes wide with amazement. How did you defeat so many with such primitive weapons? Jake helped the alien to his feet. Because I didn't rely on my weapons to win the fight. I used my brain, my training, and my experience. Technology is just a tool. The warrior using it is what matters. Thrak's damaged armor was sparking, but he was still alive. I do not understand, human. Your guns fire simple bullets. How did they penetrate our armor? I didn't try to penetrate your armor, Jake explained as he helped the big alien stand. I found the weak points that your designers never thought anyone would target. Every piece of technology has flaws. You just have to know how to find them. Zara had recovered enough to return to her normal form. The Vorthans had weapons that could destroy buildings. How did you survive? By not being where they expected. Me to be, Jake said simply. I didn't fight their strength. I attacked their weaknesses. As they escaped from the fortress, Jake's charges began exploding throughout the building. The power grid failed, the communication systems went down, and the automated defenses shut off. The mighty fortress that had seemed impregnable was now just a dark shell. The alien rescue ships arrived just as they reached the forest. As they were being evacuated, Zendai looked at Jake with something like respect in his white eyes. I was wrong about your species, he said. Your weapons may be primitive, but your mind is more advanced than any technolo. 3 days later, Jake stood once again in the massive meeting hall of Nexus Prime. But this time, the atmosphere was completely different. The alien beings who had laughed at him before were now silent, watching him with expressions of surprise and respect. Admiral Zexter sat at the head of the table, his purple skin darker than usual. His black eyes were fixed on Jake as he spoke. Lieutenant Commander Sullivan, your report has been most enlightening. You accomplished a mission that we believed was impossible for a human. Jake stood at attention in his dress uniform, the same one he had worn to receive medals for his service on Earth. Sir, I simply completed the mission as assigned. Commander Veltara leaned forward, her silver skin dim with embarrassment. But you did more than complete the mission, human. You rescued our warriors when they failed. You destroyed a fortress that our best strategists said could not be taken. War Chief Gorth's rocky voice was quiet for the first time since Jake had met him. My warriors have been fighting for centuries, human, but they have never seen tactics like yours. How did you defeat enemies with such advanced weapons? Jake looked around the table at all the alien faces watching him. 3 days ago, they had thought humans were primitive and weak. Now they wanted to understand how he had succeeded where their advanced warriors had failed. With respect, sir, Jake began, I think you've been asking the wrong question. You keep asking how I defeated advanced weapons with primitive ones. But that's not what happened. The aliens looked confused. Zendai, whose arm was still in a healing device from his injuries, spoke up. And what did happen, Jake Sullivan? I defeated advanced warriors who had forgotten how to fight. Jake said simply, your technology is incredible. Your weapons are more powerful than anything we have on Earth, but you've become so dependent on them that you've forgotten the basics of warfare. Admiral Zexther's eyes narrowed. Explain. Jake activated a holographic display that showed the layout of the bay. Vorthen Fortress. Look at this base. It has energy shields, automated turrets, and elite guards. Very impressive. But the designers made the same mistake that most advanced civilizations make. Which is? Asked Commander Veltara. They assumed that their technology would work perfectly and that their enemies would attack in predictable ways. They never planned for what to do if someone attacked from an unexpected direction or used tactics they hadn't seen before. Jake pointed to different parts of the fortress. The shields were designed to stop energy weapons and spacecraft. They couldn't stop someone who climbed the mountain on foot. The turrets were programmed to detect and destroy flying vehicles. They never looked for a single person crawling through a ventilation shaft. War Chief Gorth made a sound like grinding stone. But those approaches would be impossible for most species. The climb was too difficult, the shaft too narrow. Exactly. Jake said, the Vorthens planned their defenses around what they thought was possible. They never considered that someone might do something that seemed impossible. Zara, who was back to her normal human appearance, raised her hand. But Jake, your weapons really are primitive compared to ours. How did they work against Vorthen? Armor? Jake smiled. Because I didn't try to match their technology. I used different principles entirely. Your energy weapons are more powerful, but they're also more complex. They have more parts that can fail, more systems that can be disrupted. He pulled out his M4 carbine and placed it on the table. Several aliens moved back nervously. This rifle uses chemical energy to fire a metal projectile. It's simple, reliable, and works in any environment. Most importantly, the Vorthens had never seen anything like it. Their armor was designed to stop energy beams, Jake continued. It had never been tested against high-velocity bullets. I found the weak points that no one had thought to protect because no one used weapons like mine anymore. Zendai's white eyes were thoughtful. So you succeeded not because your weapons were better, but because they were different. That's part of it, Jake agreed. But the bigger advantage was tactical, not technological. You've all been at peace for so long that you've forgotten what war really looks like. The aliens looked uncomfortable. Commander Veltara spoke for all of them. We have not been at peace, human. We have fought many battles against various enemies. No, Jake said firmly. You've had skirmishes. You've had disagreements settled by superior technology. But you haven't had real wars where survival depends on adaptation and creativity. Jake walked around the table as he spoke. On Earth, we've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've faced every kind of enemy you can imagine. We've learned to fight in mountains, deserts, jungles, cities, and oceans. We've learned to win when we're outnumbered, outgunned, and out of supplies. He stopped in front of Admiral Zexther. Most importantly, we've learned that the best weapon isn't the most advanced one. It's the one that your enemy isn't prepared for. War Chief Gorth leaned forward. Are you saying that humans are better warriors than us? Jake shook his head. I'm saying that humans are different warriors than you. You've evolved beyond the need for constant warfare. That's actually a good thing. But it also means you've lost some of the skills that come from having to fight for survival. He returned to his position at attention. The Vorthens are dangerous because they still have those skills. They're conquerors who've spent centuries fighting and adapting. They combine advanced technology with old-fashioned warrior instincts. That's why your conventional tactics don't work against them. The room was quiet for a long moment. Finally, Admiral Zexther spoke. What do you recommend, Lieutenant Commander Sullivan? Jake had been thinking about this question for 3 days. Sir, I recommend that you stop trying to fight the Vorthens with pure technology. They've adapted to that. Instead, use asymmetric warfare. Hit them where they don't expect it, with tactics they haven't seen before. You mean fight like humans? Asked Commander Veltara. Fight like warriors, Jake corrected. Use your advanced technology, but combine it with old-fashioned tactics. Be unpredictable. Make them react to you instead of the other way around. Zara raised her hand again. Would Earth be willing to help train our forces in these tactics? Jake looked around the table at the alien faces. 3 days ago, they had mocked Earth's military as primitive and useless. Now they were asking for help. That would be a decision for my superiors, Jake said diplomatically. But I think they would be interested in discussing it. Admiral Zexter stood up, and the rest of the aliens followed his example. Lieutenant, Commander Sullivan, on behalf of the Galactic Defense Council, I formally apologize for our earlier behavior. We underestimated both you and your species. Jake remained at attention. No apology necessary, sir. You judged us based on the information you had. Nevertheless, the Admiral continued, we were wrong. Your mission report shows that human military tactics are not primitive. They are sophisticated in ways we had not considered. War Chief Gorth's rocky voice was respectful. You fought 20 trained warriors with hand weapons and won. That is not primitive. That is masterful. Commander Veltara nodded in agreement. We assumed that advanced technology automatically meant advanced tactics. You have shown us that there are many different kinds of advancement. Jake relaxed slightly. Sir, if I may say so, I think this could be the beginning of a valuable partnership. Your technology combined with human tactical thinking could be very effective against the Vorthans. I agree, said Admiral Zexter. We will contact your government immediately to discuss joint training programs and shared operations. As the meeting ended and the aliens began to file out, Zendai approached Jake. The blue-skinned telepath looked thoughtful. Jake Sullivan, he said, when I first met you, I thought your mind was primitive because it was different from ours. Now I realize that difference is exactly what makes it valuable. How so? Jake asked. We all think in similar patterns because we use similar technology and similar training. But your mind works in ways that are completely unexpected to us. That makes you unpredictable to enemies as well. Jake nodded. That's the idea. In warfare, being predictable can get you killed. Zendai smiled, an expression that looked strange on his alien features. I would very much like to learn more about human tactical thinking. Perhaps we could train together sometime. I'd like that, Jake said, shaking the alien's hand. Later, as Jake prepared to return to Earth, he thought about everything that had happened. He had started this mission as an observer, expected to fail quickly and prove human weakness. Instead, he had succeeded in ways that surprised even him. But more importantly, he had opened a door between Earth and the galaxy. Humans were no longer seen as primitive creatures playing with fire. They were recognized as warriors with valuable skills and unique perspectives. As his shuttle lifted off from Nexus Prime, Jake looked back at the massive space station. Somewhere out there, the Vorthan Empire was still expanding, still conquering worlds. But now they would face something they had never encountered before, the combined technology of advanced civilizations, guided by the tactical thinking of a species that had never stopped fighting. Jake smiled as Earth grew larger in the young shuttle's windows. He was going home to report to his superiors that humanity had just become a major play.